My wife mocked my startup and filed for divorce. Now my company's worth millions, and she's calling every week just to catch up. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I've spent most of my adult life chasing an idea everyone said was stupid. To most people, it was just another tech dream, the kind that burns savings faster than it builds results. But to me, it was everything. It was freedom. It was proof that I could create something meaningful out of nothing. My wife, Amanda, never really saw it that way. She's smart, practical, and grounded in numbers, the kind of person who triple checks a grocery bill. When we got married, I was working a comfortable corporate job. The pay wasn't life-changing, but it was stable. Then one day, I came home with that look, the one she'd later call the spark that ruined everything. I told her I was quitting to build my own startup. At first, she tried to be supportive. She smiled, hugged me, and said she believed in me. But I could see the hesitation behind her eyes. The late nights began almost immediately. I'd sit hunched over my desk, coding until my vision blurred, while she ate dinner alone and texted friends about how he's still at it. Our once warm apartment started feeling colder, not because the heater broke, but because silence had replaced conversation. I remember one night, I missed her cousin's engagement dinner. I was knee-deep in debugging a system failure that had wiped a week's worth of work. When I finally looked at the time, it was 1 a.m. She was sitting on the couch, makeup smudged, scrolling through her phone without looking at me. "You know," she said quietly, "maybe it's time you grow up and get a real job." Her tone wasn't angry, just tired, like someone who'd stopped hoping for a better answer. And for the first time, I realized this dream I was chasing might cost me more than I thought. After that night, something in me hardened. I told myself I couldn't quit, not after walking away from a steady paycheck, not after everyone said I'd fail. I started waking up before dawn, pouring coffee into the same chipped mug, and sitting in front of my computer until the city lights went out again. My world shrank to a screen filled with lines of code, spreadsheets, and rejection emails from investors who didn't even bother to remember my name. Amanda's patience didn't last long. She'd walk past me in the mornings, fully dressed for work, and mutter, "You'll burn yourself out." By the time she came home, I'd be half asleep at my desk, surrounded by empty energy drink cans and takeout boxes. The apartment that once smelled like her favorite vanilla candles now reeked of cold coffee and fried noodles. I tried to make her see the progress, the prototype, the traction, the small wins no one else noticed. But every time I talked about it, she'd sigh and say, "Can we not talk about your project for one night?" She wanted date nights, vacations, normalcy, things that didn't exist in my version of survival. One Friday, I surprised her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I thought maybe we could reconnect, even for an hour. But as soon as I set the bags down, she looked up from her phone and asked, "Did you finally get that job interview?" When I told her I hadn't, she just laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're still chasing this? How long until you admit it's not going anywhere?" I wanted to shout, to defend myself, to tell her that every sacrifice would mean something one day. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the floor, realizing she'd stopped seeing the man who loved her and only saw the failure she was waiting to escape from. And the worst part? I couldn't blame her. A few weeks later, Amanda invited me to dinner with her friends, something we hadn't done in months. She said, "It'll be good for you to get out of your cave." I took it as a peace offering, maybe even a sign that she still wanted to make things work. I put on the one decent shirt I owned that didn't smell like coffee or code, and tried to convince myself I belonged in that world again. The restaurant was loud, polished, and full of people who looked like they'd already figured life out. Amanda's friends were bankers, consultants, marketers, people who lived in spreadsheets and vacations. As we ordered drinks, one of them leaned over and asked with a grin, "So, how's your little app thing going?" I smiled awkwardly. "It's coming along. I've got a prototype that—" But before I could finish, Amanda cut in, laughing. "Oh, please, don't get him started. It's basically a hobby he's pretending is a business." They all laughed. I forced a chuckle, too, trying not to let it sting, but my throat tightened. Her best friend added, "You're lucky he's home all day. I wish my husband could be around that much." the table erupted again. I sat there, smiling through it, but my hands were trembling under the table. Amanda didn't even notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. She kept sipping her wine, basking in the attention like it was just harmless teasing. When we got home, I finally asked, "Why would you say that in front of them?" She looked at me like I was overreacting. "Oh, come on, it was a joke. Don't be so sensitive." But it wasn't a joke to me. It was the moment I realized she wasn't embarrassed for me. She was embarrassed of me. That night, while she slept, I sat in the dark, staring at my computer screen, feeling smaller than ever. For the first time, I wondered if my dream was really worth the person I was losing. After that dinner, something in me broke. The laughter from that night kept echoing in my head. Every smirk, every dismissive glance. I started avoiding Amanda's friends altogether, pouring myself deeper into work. I told myself I'd make it, not just for the dream anymore, but to prove her wrong. But the harder I worked, the colder things got between us. Our savings were almost gone. The credit card statements piled up on the counter like a silent accusation. Amanda would flip through them, muttering numbers under her breath before slamming them down. "You spent $200 on software again?" She snapped one morning. "We can't even pay rent next month." I tried to explain, "I'm close, Amanda. I just need one more update before I can pitch again." She scoffed. "You've been saying that for a year." Her voice cracked then, softer but sharper. "You're ruining both our lives." That night I stayed up coding until sunrise. My eyes burned, my head throbbed, and when I finally hit run, the program crashed. All my progress, weeks of work, was gone. I just sat there, motionless, staring at the error message until I heard footsteps behind me. Amanda was standing in the doorway, suitcase in hand. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly. "I need stability, not promises." I turned to her, exhausted. "So that's it? You're giving up on me?" She didn't answer, just gave me one last look that said everything. Disappointment, pity, maybe even relief. Then she walked out. The apartment felt dead after that. No scent of her perfume, no soft hum of her hairdryer, no laughter echoing from the other room. Just silence, and in that silence, I realized I'd lost everything. The woman I loved, the life I built, and maybe the last bit of faith I had left in myself. The weeks after she left blurred together. A loop of coffee, code, and quiet breakdowns I pretended weren't happening. The first time I saw her name pop up in my phone bill under a new address, I knew it was real. Amanda was gone for good. She hadn't even taken half of our stuff, just her clothes, her laptop, and the framed wedding photo from our dresser. Somehow, that one missing picture hurt the most. I stopped sleeping. My appetite vanished. My apartment looked like a war zone. Papers everywhere, dishes piled up, half-empty cans of Red Bull turning sticky on the desk. Investors had stopped replying. My landlord left a final notice taped to the door. Eviction. Pending. I remember standing there holding that paper thinking, maybe she was right. Maybe I am a failure. One night I opened my old email drafts and found a half-written message to my previous boss, a plea to get my corporate job back. My fingers hovered over send. My pride said no, but the rest of me was ready to give in. That's when I saw it, a bug in my code, one I'd missed for weeks. It was small, almost invisible, but it explained everything that had been going wrong. My heart started pounding as I fixed it, line by line, running the test again and again until... success. The app came alive, smoother and faster than ever before. I sat there laughing and crying at the same time. It wasn't a miracle. It was persistence, finally paying off. And for the first time in months, I felt something stronger than despair. Defiance. Amanda had left me at my lowest. Everyone else had moved on. But this was mine. My one last chance to turn pain into something that meant something. So I made myself a promise right there in that empty, freezing apartment. If I'm going down, I'm taking my dream all the way to the end. That night marked the turning point, though I didn't realize it yet. After fixing the code, I posted a demo video of my app on a developer forum, just to share the progress, not expecting anything. By the time I woke up the next morning, my inbox was flooded. Comments poured in. "This is genius." "How did you build this?" "DM me, I want in." For the first time in months, people actually saw what I saw. My work wasn't a joke anymore. It was real, and people cared. One message stood out. A small investor from Seattle who said he'd been following my posts for a while. He wanted to hop on a call. My hands shook as I typed back, trying to sound calm. "Sure, how about tomorrow?" The next day, I sat in front of my cracked laptop, wearing the same hoodie I'd coded in for months, waiting for the call. The investor, a middle-aged guy named Martin, said, "Look, your idea's raw, but it has legs. I'm willing to back you with 50 grand if you can scale this." I froze. $50,000. I'd gone from begging my landlord for an extension to having someone believe in me again. I thanked him repeatedly, barely holding back tears. Within weeks, I had a small team of developers working remotely. We built, tested, broke, and rebuilt until the app became something bigger than I'd ever imagined. I stopped hearing Amanda's voice in my head telling me to grow up. Instead, I heard users asking for updates, journalists emailing for interviews. But even as things began to rise, I stayed cautious. I'd been burned too deeply to feel invincible. Every success came with a whisper in the back of my mind. Don't celebrate yet. You've lost it all before. Still, I couldn't help but smile at the thought that maybe, just maybe, the life Amanda said I was ruining was only just beginning. 6 months later, my life didn't look anything like the ruins I'd been living in. The app exploded in popularity. We'd secured another round of funding, hired a marketing lead, and moved operations into a small office downtown that still smelled like new paint and caffeine. I remember walking through that door for the first time and thinking, this is it. This is where everything changes. But success didn't come quietly. Every day was chaos. Calls, pitches, partnerships, and endless pressure. I slept under my desk sometimes, waking up to the hum of computers and the glow of monitors that never turned off. My team believed in me, but I couldn't shake the memory of all the people who hadn't. Every article that mentioned my name felt like proof that I wasn't crazy after all. One afternoon, my PR manager came rushing in with a tablet. "You're trending," she said. There it was, a headline that read, "The Underdog Founder Who Risked It All." For a moment, I just stared at it, feeling something between pride and disbelief. Then, like a reflex, I thought of Amanda. I remembered her laughter that night at the restaurant, her words about getting a real job. I wondered if she'd seen the article, if she knew that the hobby she mocked was now a company with employees, investors, and a growing user base. I wanted to call her, not to brag, but to tell her I made it, to see if she'd care. But I didn't. Because even as the world started believing in me, I realized I was still learning how to believe in myself again. And deep down, I knew something was coming. I just didn't know that the next person to call me would be the one who once walked away. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind where my calendar was packed and my brain felt like it was on autopilot. I was in the middle of reviewing a contract when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it until I saw the name flash across the screen. Amanda. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. My stomach tightened as I stared at her name, that familiar mix of curiosity and resentment flooding back. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hey," she said softly, her voice cautious but sweet, like someone testing the water before diving in. "I just saw an article about your company. I had no idea things were going so well for you." I leaned back in my chair, forcing a neutral tone. "Yeah, it's been busy," she laughed a little. "I always knew you'd do something great. I mean, I might not have shown it then, but I believed in you, you know?" That line nearly made me laugh out loud. Believed in me. The same woman who mocked my dream in front of her friends. But I didn't bite. I just said, "Appreciate it." She kept talking, filling the silence with nostalgia. How she'd been thinking about me lately, how her job was stressful, how she missed the old us. I listened, saying little. Her voice carried that same rhythm it used to when she wanted something. careful, deliberate, rehearsed. Then she said, "Maybe we could catch up sometime." "Just coffee, nothing weird," I hesitated. The logical part of me screamed no, but another part, the one that once loved her, wanted to see how far this would go. So I said, "Sure, coffee sounds fine." But as I hung up, something in me shifted. I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't desperate. I was curious to see what kind of person she'd become, and if she'd recognize the man she once left behind. We agreed to meet at this quiet little restaurant downtown. Ironically, the same one where her friends had laughed at me years ago. I didn't mention that when I texted her the address. Maybe part of me wanted to walk into that same place and reclaim it. When I arrived, Amanda was already there, sitting by the window in a sleek black dress. She still looked beautiful, but not in the same way I remembered. There was a stiffness in her smile, a kind of weariness in her eyes. For a moment, I wondered if she felt the same discomfort twisting in my stomach. "Wow," she said as I sat down. "You look different, confident." "Guess things have changed," I replied. The conversation started light. Old memories, mutual friends, surface-level nostalgia. But as the wine flowed, her tone shifted. She leaned forward, fingers brushing the rim of her glass. "I've been thinking about us a lot lately. About how maybe I didn't appreciate what you were trying to do." I kept my expression calm. "You made your choices, Amanda." She sighed, lowering her voice. "I know, I just didn't realize what I was walking away from. Seeing your name everywhere, it made me think maybe I gave up too soon." There it was, the confession beneath the compliments. She wasn't there to apologize. She was there to circle back now that success had rewritten the narrative. I smiled politely. "You were right to leave. You wanted stability, and I couldn't give that to you then." Her eyes flickered with something. Regret, maybe. Or anger at my indifference. She said quietly, "Maybe we both made mistakes." "Maybe," I said, standing to leave. "But some mistakes don't get second chances." I left her sitting there, speechless the same way I'd once been, and as I stepped outside into the cool night air, I realized for the first time I didn't feel bitter anymore. Just free. A few weeks passed after that dinner. I thought that would be the end of it. A closed chapter, one final conversation to clear the ghosts. But then everything exploded. Our company finalized a major acquisition deal with a global tech giant. Overnight, headlines spread everywhere. Small startup acquired for $48 million. Founder's journey from rock bottom to breakthrough. My name was on every business site, every LinkedIn post, every trending feed. My phone didn't stop buzzing for hours. Congratulations. Interviews, partnerships, but buried between all the noise were messages from Amanda. First a simple, "Saw the news. So proud of you." Then another, "I can't stop thinking about everything we went through. Can we talk?" Then another, "Please, just one call." I didn't answer any of them. By the fourth day, she left a voicemail, her voice trembling, half sincere, half desperate. "I just want to understand how you did it. I was scared back then. I didn't know how to believe in something that didn't make sense. But seeing what you've built, I'm proud of you. I really am, and I miss you." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered sitting in that same apartment, broke, humiliated, watching her walk out with her suitcase while I begged the universe for one last chance. Instead of replying, I donated part of the acquisition money to a nonprofit that funds small developers trying to make it on their own, the same kind of dreamers I used to be. When the press asked why, I told them, because no one should have to choose between love and ambition. That quote went viral. It wasn't aimed at her, but she'd know it was about her. About us, and when she texted me again that night, "I read what you said. Can we start over?" I stared at the message for a long time before finally pressing delete. After deleting her message, I sat there staring at my phone, waiting for some kind of reaction. Guilt, satisfaction, anger, but none came. Just silence. A strange, peaceful kind of silence that felt foreign after years of chaos. I realized I didn't need her validation anymore. The version of me she walked away from had been desperate for approval. The man I'd become didn't need it to breathe. In the days that followed, I started clearing things out. Old boxes, emails, photos. I found one of our wedding pictures buried in a drawer, the frame cracked from when I'd dropped it months ago. I held it for a moment, studying the smiles we'd both worn that day. It didn't hurt the way it used to. It just looked like two people who hadn't yet learned who they were. That night, I opened my laptop and scrolled through a folder labeled Startup Early Days. Every file name, every rough draft, every sleepless night, it was all there. The digital trail of the man who refused to quit. And for the first time, I didn't see failure or struggle. I saw proof. Proof that I'd kept going when no one else believed I could. Friends kept telling me I should get closure by talking to Amanda one last time. But I knew that wasn't what I needed. Closure isn't about getting answers. It's about realizing you don't need them anymore. Before shutting my phone for the night, I deleted her number. Permanently. No backups, no hesitation. Watching it disappear from my contacts felt like taking a deep breath after years underwater. And as the screen went dark, I whispered to myself, the best revenge was never proving her wrong. It was proving to myself that I didn't need her to be right. A year passed faster than I could have imagined. The company had grown beyond anything I once dared to dream. New offices, new teams, new ideas, and somehow I had become the face of it all. There were days I still woke up expecting to be in that tiny apartment, surrounded by debt and doubt, but instead, I opened my eyes to floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline I used to chase from afar. One afternoon, I was mentoring a young developer, a nervous 20-something who reminded me painfully of my old self. He confessed, "My girlfriend keeps telling me to quit and get a stable job. Says this whole startup thing is childish." I smiled and said, "People will always call your dreams foolish until they start working." He laughed, not realizing that advice came from scars, not wisdom. That night, as the office lights dimmed, I stood by the window, phone buzzing in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Amanda still called every week now. A polite text, a "just checking in," or a nostalgic voicemail about how she'd love to catch up. I never replied. Not out of anger anymore, but peace. She was a chapter that ended exactly where it needed to. I turned back to my desk, watching my team laugh over late-night takeout, the same way Amanda once told me to stop doing. It hit me. I hadn't just built a company. I'd built proof that belief doesn't need permission. As I left for the night, the city lights shimmered like the code I used to write in the dark. I whispered to myself, she calls every week now, and every time I let it ring. Because sometimes silence isn't emptiness. It's victory that no words could ever express.